Hello, welcome to Feedback for the week of March 21st, 2011. I'm Adam SESSLER. Of course, joining us today, Nicole Zavalich.
Hello.
Stephen Johnson.
Hi, Internet.
And Kevin Kelly.
Howdy, folks.
So we haven't done this, actually, since we did this at PAX.
That's
in a
right.
room filled with people. You know, and Ken Levine.
And Ken Levine sitting next to
a
us.
very fit-looking Ken Levine, I would like to add. Props to him.
And wasn't it cool to learn how nerdy he was and that he was one of us?
And if you
One of
haven't
us.
seen this PAX feedback, there is a dark moment that happens towards the top of it when Ken and I both kind of realized that we were not the only ones, except it was just the two of us, that played D&D by ourselves because we were so awkward, unsocial, and just needed to find
By
a
yourself.
comfortable place with more danger for us to hide in.
One of our commenters called that dungeon masturbating when you play D&D by yourself.
It sure is. It sure is, especially when you're 7 and you don't know what to do down there.
In the dungeon. In the dungeon.
In the dungeon, in the dungeon, in the dungeon with the gelatinous cubes.
Why did this go
Well
there?
played, well played.
Now, one thing, we don't usually start feedback on a kind of a less than positive note, but one thing that happened at PAX, which we did not address at PAX because as busy as we were, there was obviously this surrounding context from the moment we arrived of the 9.0 earthquake that hit Japan, the tsunami, and now obviously we're still seeing the ramifications of this remarkable nuclear facility that just cannot get under control. That was... It really was something that was casting something of a pallor over PAX, that, you know, if you were not talking about games or doing stuff on camera, I think that most people were looking at a TV, talking with people, obviously talking to people from Japanese game companies about, you know, how their facilities were, how their employees were out there in Japan.
And that first day in the press room, literally the internet was choked with people watching the videos of
it was just
everything.
it was very hard to turn your eyes away, as horrific as it actually was. And also for a lot of us out on the West Coast, I had the misfortune of falling asleep with CNN on, not knowing what happened, woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning just hearing tsunami and California, and woke my wife up at 1 o'clock in the morning, who just laughed at me. Go caring. Anyway, obviously, Japan is a large center for where video games are made, and there have been a lot of impacts with the earthquake in terms of games being released, and I think some production cycles as well. Steve, what do you know about this?
Well, you know, like the impact of the earthquake is so broad and so great that there's really no way to predict that how it will affect the industry as a whole, because I mean it's going to affect the entire economy, not just of Japan but of the entire world.
And then also an economy much larger than the video game economy. I mean, there are parts for games, parts for cars. All these things are being made.
Electronics industry.
Yeah,
I mean, and other finance and market. I mean, the whole thing is so huge that we can't really know how it's going to affect the game industry, except for these sort of specific things, which are that MOTORSTORM Apocalypse has been delayed indefinitely in the United States, and has been, I think it's been canceled in Japan because, as Sony put it, we are very conscious of the parallels between these events and the underlying theme in MOTORSTORM, and are doing everything we can to be as sensitive as possible to the situation. I mean, the fact that it's called Apocalypse does not help.
And it does take place like in a ravaged coastal location.
I mean,
exactly
it cuts a little bit
Earthquake
close.
ravage,
It's
yeah.
too bad. It's too bad because it's
Terrible.
just bad timing. I mean, it's obvious they weren't
it's
trying to do anything
I
like that.
well, if we go back to 9/11, you remember the coup with that original album cover? I
Oh,
mean, that
that's
thing
right.
shipped before the event happened.
That's
Yet
right.
they actually had to somehow take up, they had to defend themselves, from something that they had no anticipation of. It was, and I remember there were a handful of games, and the plane flying was taken out of Grand Theft Auto 3 as a result, and that game suffered a delay.
That's true. And so as far as the disaster in Japan, other games that have been canceled or affected are Yakuza of the End.
Yeah, this is the kind of weird offshoot of Yakuza that has
Zombies
monsters.
and
Once
fictional
again,
cities.
Tokyo is ravaged by an earthquake.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't take much explaining to understand why these games might suffer a delay.
Disaster Report 4 canceled just outright because the earthquake was central to the story, and really nobody's in Japan is going to want to play a game about an earthquake, I wouldn't think.
Unfortunately, I think right now, Disaster Report 4 has suddenly gone on my radar and it's about to drop off.
I know, exactly.
That
Both
game-
entered and left my consciousness on the same day.
That game, however, was completed. It was just about to enter gold mastering, and I mean, think about that. That game, now it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
Maybe in a couple of years they'll. I don't know what they do with the game.
Is it a popular franchise?
It was popular at the Tokyo Game Show. There was a huge crowd around it, but I'd never heard of it. So
Yeah.
But it's not uncommon at Tokyo Game Show.
Yeah.
And the final game on my list is Gun Loco, which was Square Enix's very strange third-person shooter, which wasn't necessarily canceled because of the earthquake, or so Square Enix said, but they just said, hey, it's canceled, and they didn't give any reason. So who knows if there's something in the plot line about earthquakes or if it's just completely unrelated, but
I think it was a
we
bad
won't be
game.
playing Gun Loco.
I'm wondering about
I
that.
thought it looked cool, though.
It
I thought
already
looked
missed
awesome.
its first release date, so it must have been pretty far into production to be canceled. So I wonder why and why they haven't told
Well,
us.
I mean,
Or it was just
another
bad.
thing is that, Square, who, yes, they are definitely generating revenue from the West, but that is still a very, very Japanese game company. And I think it's fair to assume that, hey, you're going to see a softening of the Japanese economy, and the appetite or the ability to purchase a lot of games is probably going to shrink somewhat, and that there may be just financial decisions that are also being made there.
Yeah.
That, hey, we can't just flood the market with product and expect people to buy it. One other question: is anyone aware of, say, with the 3DS and some of the other important parts for PS3s and 360s, but really for the 3DS? How much do we know how much of that is being manufactured in Japan, and how that might slow down the production line?
There were some warnings about possible shortages for the 3DS at launch, but
But that could just be because Nintendo doesn't
yeah,
have
Right.
enough.
that warning went out a while ago, actually. Like
Yeah.
the first one about that.
I mean, I'm thinking about that batch that's supposed to come after this first batch is going to sell out this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that. I mean, I haven't heard anything about that, and it would be hard to predict again exactly, specifically how this is going to affect one specific part of the economy.
Right.
I mean, in a general sense, I understand that the markets are doing better in Japan, and the news is better out of the nuclear power
Yeah,
plant that
I mean,
they
there
finally at least come close to getting under control.
I think once it comes to just kind of getting a plan of how you're going to rebuild this massive area, and then obviously there's rolling blackouts in Tokyo that are just kind of slowing down production.
it's
as it
actually
is.
I'm not sure how rosy the picture is there. They had a 6.3 quake today in aftershock. I mean, that's still
Yeah.
fairly sizable.
I mean,
and
that's something that would freak us out here in California,
definitely.
another
Yeah,
region that's
it would
rather
knock down
accustomed to
buildings.
earthquakes.
Well,
and Sony, Toyota, and Honda have all shut down production. It was Sony shutdown has even affected us here with like our ability to get the physical media that we record
yeah,
on.
the tapes that we need.
Not even 2 weeks
it's
afterwards.
definitely rippling out. Obviously, for anybody who's out there in Japan, obviously our friends in the game industry, our thoughts are definitely with them during this difficult time. All right, not to be glib, let's move on to the other aspect of PAX East, which was the intended purpose of being there, and it was checking out some games. We're going to do a quick highlight for those of you that haven't seen our PAX episode, but that doesn't mean you can get away with not seeing it. So we're just going to hint at things to force you to hear more about
That's
it. Nicole, did anything stand out to you? Was it good or bad?
Well, I finally got some hands-on time with Star Wars: Old Republic. So, I mean, good. That's
that's
my
good.
impression of that.
It's a
I
good.
played as a trooper class, and it's kind of like a tank. They tried to make it not like WoW, and I didn't play WoW that much. I was on like level 17 before I pieced out, but I can see
Better
a lot
than
of
me.
stuff.
I tried earlier this year.
It's good though. It's not one of those addictions that you want. It's not a fun addiction.
Exactly.
But Old Republic was great, and then Fear 3's multiplayer. I really thought that they try and do something different there, and I really like that.
Let's use that to initiate a theme that I think is going to come up through the course of this feedback today. Multiplayer that at least is trying to be distinct from all the other multiplayers out there, which is something that the Fear 3 is definitely attempting to accomplish. Kevin, anything stand out to you?
Well, L.A. Noire, but I mean, what more can you say about that game? I got to stop talking about it.
I just need to play this game.
I know, because it's soon. It's May. We're almost
my
there.
vernacular has started to shift.
Towards that 40s?
Yeah, just kind of like, call my wife a mall. I'm saying she's got great gams. It's
You're going to give up the information. See, Flatfoot?
Hands a sawbuck, kid.
Yeah, see?
I don't get any of that.
That looked amazing. We saw a new
was before you were
murder
born.
investigation from that.
See, back when we were kids, we used to talk like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Okay.
and pop
Well,
our
that's after we
suspenders
came
all the
back
time.
from the war.
And we wore arm garters. That was
You
really
guys
cool.
look great, by the way.
Remember you during those Zoot Suit riots?
With the chain
This guy.
You and that
and the hat.
This guy with the shoulder pads and the hat. And
Don't
the
think
chain.
I'm not. I don't think I'm not going to bring it back. But the other thing that really impressed me was like the indies have really kind of pushed to the forefront. I was so impressed with Orcs Must Die, Fez.
I saw
Warp.
Fez.
Yeah, no,
Trapdoors,
let's mention one
cool
thing, and this is
distribution model.
in no way to the discredit of these indie developers. One of the ones I really like is Skulls of the Shogun. But all these guys, it's a very independent game, independently financed, and some of them don't have a publisher yet. But a lot of these guys are coming from established teams. They're
That's true.
seeking refuge and creative refuge outside of the EAs, the Activisions of the world. Like Orcs Must Die, there's quite a few former Ensemble people there.
Yeah,
Makes-
and the
makes you
guys
wonder
from Fallen Frontier, they're the ex-Bungie employees who started their own
exactly.
company called Moonshot.
Makes you wonder if it's more that mainstream games suck than the indie games are so good. I mean, not suck, but are getting so unoriginal and so sequel heavy and so the same that people are just dying for anything different.
Well, it's also like that level of safety that you see. You know, and I think that's why a game like L.A. Noire is so standing out to us this year. It's just like, wow, that is different.
It's not what we've seen. It's amazing.
Not
One of the
an
things
MMO, not an
I'm
FPS.
seeing in a lot of the smaller games is that they tend to have one large gameplay hook.
Yeah.
But it tends to be something that they're trying to change from the standard. And it's almost like this safer, less expensive space to try to experiment with like necessary progressions in gameplay design that will eventually get absorbed into the larger games. That we're creating this interesting ecosystem because I wish there was more experimentation going on in my $100 million budgeted games, but I have to at least concede I understand why they may not be taking too many chances.
And I think these
Experiments
developers
sometimes fail.
those developers get bored, I think, and they're like, we're just doing Call of Duty 75. Let's go make a cool little indie title, and it seems to be working really well.
Call of Duty 75. I see that as a theme that might be coming up later on throughout the course of this feedback.
When?
Like I said, Skulls with the Shogun definitely stood out. And that game Warp was just such a curious little game that felt like Portal.
It did
but
look like Portal.
Portal mixed with Splinter Cell.
And it's a top-down view. And
I think, and EA picked that up.
EA picked it up, and Fez, I believe, as well. Both of those are being put out by Trapdoor. Polytron developed Fez. That game is gorgeous, by the way.
Everyone, go to our site to learn more about these games. Go watch that feedback where we talk about these games at length. And also, while you're there, get ready, because obviously Sunday, the Nintendo 3DS comes out. Woo! Yes, 3D in your hand without the glasses.
But you can read all of our coverage today.
Exactly. So if you want to read everything about it, check it out. I think this is. I think with the 3DS, start reading now and keep reading. This is. I think our opinions on this system are going to evolve over time as we start to see the more significant titles come out. Because we are seeing not probably the strongest lineup starting out, but I think things will change. Say June, July, maybe December. All right. With that, let's go to our two games of the week because we were obviously with PAX last week. We missed what looked like was going to be a major release for the first part of 2011.
It's doing all right.
I've heard it's been getting discounted.
It's already on sale. It's already on sale. That's right.
Homefront.
Wow.
This was a game that's about North Korea invading the U.S. John Milius, Crazy Pants writer who did Apocalypse Now, and everyone likes to cite him for Red Dawn. Like that was an achievement in screenwriting. But yes, he did do Red Dawn.
Just because they're remaking it now. So
well, anyone who helps keep Harry Dean Stanton employed is important to me.
That's right.
So the problem is that this thing that they were selling it on, this single player, it's how long?
About
5.5 hours?
5.5 hours.
You can blaze through that.
Shorter than Black Ops.
But it's awesome.
Okay, shorter than Black Ops, shorter than Modern Warfare 2.
Yes.
Okay, I mean that's Modern Warfare 2 is definitely the shortest of that, acceptable short length because of sort of what was in it. But is it filling it with quality to justify that?
No.
Well, define quality.
It is the most ludicrously, ridiculously tasteless, crass, stupid, unbelievable B movie of a game ever. The single player.
So Red Dawn.
It's Red Dawn, but worse. It's like
it is Red Dawn.
I've never seen.
It's not that tasteless.
But this is coming from a guy who loves the game.
Tasteless.
He likes the game.
I loved it. Oh my god! But it is so tasteless.
Did you love it? As in, I can't. I'm so happy I paid my $60 for this game. Love it.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard. It's like a B movie. It's at first I because you get fooled by the marketing because the marketing is so serious and like, oh, this is going to be a very serious shooter with a story and it's alternative and it could really happen.
Home is where the war is. It's like,
then
right
you
there.
actually play it and it's just the dumbest story ever. All the characters are.
Does the story know it's dumb?
No, that's
or is it
what's
kind
great
of like
about
the
it.
kid at the party and
That's
you just
what's
don't talk to him?
amazing about it. That's why it works. Is because the story takes itself so seriously and yet it's so dumb.
But there's not even that much story.
It's like at one point one of your allies says there are enemies in the Hooters. So
there's a lot of product placement in this game. We got Hooters, Tiger Direct, Nog.
Steven, let's get quiet. I want Steven to say that one more time, please.
There are enemies in the Hooters. And you're supposed to take that really seriously.
Because the enemies are in the Hooters.
I want you to know that in the future, the two chains that have survived are Hooters and White Castle.
And TigerDirect.com.
And TigerDirect.com and Full
Nog
Throttle.
You know
and
what? If those are the two chains that survive, I might welcome the North Korean invasion. It would be a change of
Greater
pace.
Korean
But then
Republic.
there's stuff like that where it's totally ludicrous, and then the next scene you have to jump into a mass grave and hide amongst the bodies.
That's
so
a
it's
good
just
hiding
so
spot.
ridiculous ridiculously over the top that you have to kind of
But
go.
then
"All
a
right,
couple
I love
serious
it."
moments like that with where the guy, one of the enemies gets torched, and one of your NPC buddies goes, smells like Korean barbecue. And I mean, I'm just like, whoa. When that happened, I was like,
So, like,
damn.
it just highlights
That
like
just happened.
That only
you can
happened
put up
once.
with a lot of dumbness in video games if it's aliens or zombies. Like you can go, oh, this is kind of dumb. But when it's actual other people, like it just
But if
puts
it
it on
was
this other
Nazis, would
level
it
of
be different?
awesome. Like really.
Does it even foster
Nazi
an argument
barbecue.
as
There's no
to
Nazi
how
barbecue.
North Korea, yes, a large military, but nonetheless a small nation that is starving to death, would somehow manage to invade the United States,
There's
a
a good
rather
scene,
large
a
geographical
very
space?
convincing montage.
Only if you
Yeah.
don't know
From the
anything
beginning.
about geopolitics. If you don't know anything about geopolitics
Don't.
or,
They
or
knock us
North
out with
Korean
an
history,
EMP blast,
it
and that's
could
how they get in.
Hillary
So,
Clinton's in there, and I trust her. So
Hillary Clinton's in the game.
in the
She is
beginning,
in the game.
opening
In the beginning.
Wearing a
montage.
pantsuit.
Yeah.
She's,
I love it
she's
when she
talking
does
about the
that.
sinking of the South Korean ship that actually happened,
And
they work that into the real
So
story.
they
or
really
whatever.
incorporated. I mean,
It's actually her.
the montage in the beginning is amazing. It's just so serious and dour.
It's pretty
that,
well
like, You
done.
expect,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. It sets up this like, oh, this is going to be a real scene, and then you actually play, and you're like, what?
Now,
I love it.
I
loved
will
it.
say
Like,
the
really
game,
loved it.
the single player campaign definitely suffers. I would have rated that like a 3 or a 2 maybe. The multiplayer though, however, is at least a 4. The multiplayer in this game is great. It's
now,
like,
is it distinct from Call of Duty?
it's Call of Duty-esque, but it adds some new elements.
It reminds me more of a Bad Company.
It's Bad Company and Battlefield. It's like COD and Battlefield had a baby, so this is like the junior version of both of those games.
Nice.
But you can
But an
purchase things on the
illegitimate
fly
baby.
as you're playing, or COD 3. Nah, that doesn't work. But it's they did a great job with it. I had much more fun playing the multiplayer, and I'm still playing it. Which I
Well,
put
it
more
sounds
time
like
into
most
Limbo than I
people
did
see
into
the value in
into
this game
Homefront.
as is in its multiplayer.
It's true.
I mean, I did enjoy the multiplayer, but going back to the single player, aside from the story, one of my problems was because they wanted you to stick with the story so much that they made you so reliant on your NPCs.
Yeah.
You couldn't go ahead without them. And you couldn't go up a ladder before them. And there's like 2 or 3 of them. And
Oh,
they're
that's what I
slow.
hated about
And
the
it was
ladder.
just, like, I wanted to get into the story,
loved
but
it.
there was so much waiting around
Don't
that
you love games that teach you that teamwork sucks?
it
Yeah.
sucks.
It's
I'm
so
better
good.
than them.
Like,
Or they're like, we got to go this way, and the guy's standing in the door, and you're like, I'd
It's
like
like Fallout.
I'd
It's
love
like
to
in
go.
front of you.
My
It
first
is-
thought with my teammates was that I wanted to capture them and bring them to my North Korean overlords as a tribute.
You can't
and say,
capture them.
Here you go.
can't shoot your teammates.
So you could get a reward.
You know, the fact that this
You
discussion
can shoot them, but they don't react at all.
is
It
helping
doesn't
me
hurt them, they
recall
don't-
David Brooks' editorial in the New York Times today about the dangers of multilateralism is actually one of the most interesting things that's just popped into my brain.
As related.
Back to the multiplayer, and I don't think we need to go too deep into like, what's good or bad about the multiplayer, but this is the thing that really kind of gets me, is that the multiplayer looks like they put time and effort
Yeah.
into it, and they're selling it on the back of single player. I mean,
Just
the
to
East
be
Coast,
different.
when I was at GDC, when I was obviously down here in LA, it is everywhere, these home fronts. And that billboard of the American soldier,
With the
he's got the
blindfold.
blindfold with the North Korean
Well, those were all
symbol
over
on it.
E3, remember? And those,
Right.
There's a single hallway that connects the 2 giant parts of that convention center, and those banners cannot be
But
cheap.
that
And it was
narrative,
every single banner.
that imagery is implying a narrative that should be in the single player
Which isn't
campaign,
there.
and then they short shrift gamers out there with the single player
Yeah,
campaign.
you do spend the very opening of the game in North Korean hands, but it's very brief, and the rest of the time
You
It's
kinda
just
miss
novels,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like you might think that it would be war comes to the suburbs and you would get that feeling.
Like the second half of
and-
Modern Warfare 2.
Right.
Yeah, but in a sense, it doesn't give you that because you're a super soldier and your allies are super soldiers, and it's not like
And the war
you never
happened
get
2
that.
years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
This is
like
2
you
years
never.
later.
So this
like,
is like the Resistance?
Yes,
There's no
exactly.
context of
So
what
they
happened.
just replaced Chimera with North Koreans.
Yeah,
ding,
and-
ding,
and-
ding, ding, ding.
the story is not about the North Koreans invading. It's about the resistance trying to escort some tankers to San Francisco.
Across
You know what I'm
the
saying?
bridge.
Like it's
Yeah.
not.
Do they pop out of a field with trapdoors, perchance? You know what? I wondered if John Milius' contribution was he walked in a room, nodded, and walked out. But the more I hear about this
imagine,
game,
yeah.
I actually think he
He
may have
touched
come
the
up with
script.
this.
It could. I mean, there's.
There'll be a sequel too.
It's funny that
I
you bring
think-
up the Chimera, though, because there are these enormous automated sentry guns that have a light on the front, and nobody mans them. They're
Did the North
sentient.
Koreans get one of these
That's what I
machines?
want to know. But you have to take
They
a lot of
don't
those
have
things out.
rice
They
in that
partnered
country.
with South Korea.
But they do have sentient robots.
My God, I could buy their economy with my back pocket contents. Oh God, let's move on to the game I like. And I haven't even played Homefront.
Now you
But
never
it's
will.
awesome like a B movie. I don't want
I know,
anybody to think
I
that
know.
because it's dumb, it's bad. It's good. Like, it's good.
The other half of my family that I married into is very Korean and suffered through the war, so I have to be a little bit delicate about
Very
when
good.
and where I'm playing this game out of certain sensitivities.
I can understand.
Crysis 2. Crysis is a game that I just started playing, the first one, because I finally got a computer that could play Crysis. I think this is true for a lot of people out there, but finally they have this tech that's still quite remarkable,
Yeah.
and it plays on both PC and the consoles. Having played the original Crysis and then most of it, it does get a little bit tedious, I found. This is a huge overhaul for the series, and I find myself quite compelled to keep on playing it until I sort of get
Yeah.
How many years has it been since the first Crisis?
2007 or 8?
That came out the year of Fallout 3, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right. That would have been 2008.
Yeah, so it's been a handful of years.
Vast improvement.
It is a vast improvement. Well, the
No, I-
engine is still valid, but it was like melting processors and stuff at the time. Nobody's computer could handle Crysis. So we've kind of grown into Crysis.
Well,
The consoles can handle it too now.
Yeah,
so.
they definitely can handle. One of the most interesting things I learned when I was doing the demo for this at E3 is that their tech, when they're developing the game, it is simultaneously happening for the PS3, the PC, the 360, and 3D. That it's not like there's any kind of lead skew. That's a very interesting piece of technology. Though, talk about the graphics, because Crytek is known for their graphics.
Yeah.
Beautiful exteriors, I have to say. You're in this destroyed New York City, but when you kind of go inside,
Yeah, it's not quite.
it actually reminds me of Resistance 1.
Or when you have to
Ooh,
swim.
what?
There's
Yeah.
some underwater levels, and you really lose it in those. But when you go back outside and smoke,
Underwater levels, my favorite.
smoke is billowing
swim?
everywhere, and you can only make out. And you can put your visor on
yeah.
and pick out enemies through the haze. That stuff was great. But you're right. When you go in, like, there's a lot of sewer type tunnel
Yeah, suddenly
crawling.
when you see a table, you're like, "Whew, God, that table does not look as good as the rubble outside that window." That's really strange.
And there were, I know our reviewer talked about production bugs, but like there was something on a table I couldn't pick up. It was like some kind of blue device.
Mm-hmm.
So I started shooting at it, and the entire table around it disintegrated, but the item is
The
still
object.
floating.
I
You
mean,
can't interact
it
with
is a remarkable piece of tech that only implies where maybe it didn't go as far as it implies, as you think it could.
Hoped it would.
But the other things I find so remarkable is they really figured out how to use this nano suit to
Yeah.
play this super soldier, and it's incorporated so much better into the gameplay. It's easier to access the powers on it, and in addition to that, the combat scenarios seem better attuned to you taking advantage of those powers. I mean, I love this has some of the best audio work, because when you put your shield on, it just makes this rippling sound.
And it's maximum
And you're
armor.
like, yeah, I'm like, ooh, I feel strong.
Yeah, that suit talks to you through the whole game, and
Yeah.
it's telling you like when there's a threat or when there's other options available, and it's pretty awesome. In the upgrade, when you pull up your hand and he flexes his fingers one by one as you're upgrading your nano suit,
yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
I mean, there's just some wonderful production designs. The other thing is that the original Crysis was so well known for this big island that was this open expanse, and that you can do it any way you want, which in theory sounds like a great design idea, and in practice you're like, I don't know. It's just like and once again, it was North Koreans in that game. They're
Yep.
just throwing North Koreans at you. You're like, I'll shoot them.
Are North Koreans the new Nazis?
I
good
think they're
question.
the safe Nazis because, like, they don't really have representatives outside of their own country to
That's right.
to take umbrage. I mean, even the
Yeah,
Russians
no,
are like,
it's
come
true.
on, stop this.
Yeah.
The North Koreans are like, shh.
But that's a funny parallel because Crysis it opens with an attack on the United States. Statue of Liberty is on fire.
Yeah, Crysis 2, not
Crysis
the original
2.
one.
Homefront, same thing.
they're
Koreans in
only,
there. We got
similar
both of
opening,
these.
it really is.
3
Two
years
very
apart.
different games.
Homefront's 2027. Crysis 2 is 2023.
Yeah.
I like assuming they're in the same fiction.
Yeah.
And like, the U.S. is like, what?
One's Manhattan.
We got
and one's,
aliens and Koreans to deal with.
Oh my God! So it used to be this big, wide open expanse, and I really felt that the gameplay suffered because they could never design anything kind of noticeable because it was, you may or may not actually access that part of the game. In this, they have these wonderful battle spaces with verticality because it's a destroyed city. I mean, I found it a lot of fun to die and just try something completely different.
Yeah, and it's definitely not. I mean, there is a linear quality to the game, but you're not forced on that path the entire time. You can go off and go through this building, and you're not like, okay, you have to stay here behind this cover until you shoot all the bad guys.
In fact,
you could do
staying
multiple
behind cover
things.
is not something you can do for very long
No,
in
it
this game.
gets peeled away. It'll disintegrate.
And like the AI will charge you. I mean, you're moving, and that suit it's supposed to deal with the matter at hand. Like, you can't go in a cloak for the next 3 minutes and just pop shots off.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of like, okay, I need to take care of those two guys. I'll put on my armor, charge him with the shotgun, and now I'm going to go cloak and hide in that corner.
I kept
over
thinking
there.
the cloak was going to last longer than it did, and you're sneaking up on people, and as soon as it disintegrates, as soon as the cloak goes away, they see you right away. In other games, they'll never notice you, but this is like, he's right there, and they open
Now,
up.
the story, it's interesting because they assume at the beginning that most people haven't played Crysis, and so you don't play a character from Crysis. In fact, you play a guy who suddenly is taken from a character from Crysis who dies right there, and that you're like, why am I in this incredible suit?
Yeah,
so it's almost like
he gifts it to you. It's his legacy.
But having said that, I found myself like kind of trying to figure out if I would be enjoying the story a little bit more if I had played Crysis all the way through, which I tend to go back and do probably on a very easy setting. But
well, even though you're not that character, they call you every time you're getting radio calls. They think you're still the same guy, so they're calling you Prophet, which
you're
is the
trying
guy
to
from
save
the
the world, and no one even knows your name.
I know, isn't that sad?
That's how I got
Typical.
this shirt.
I have a dream like that every night, and then
Guy
I go
died and
blind.
willed it to me. You know,
It happens.
Just found it, took it off his
But
body.
I spent so much time in the single player because I was loving it. I haven't had time to check out the multiplayer.
I have not
yet.
either, and I've heard wonderful things about the 3D.
Yeah.
They really did.
I played the
Oh, you
PS3
have
version.
seen it.
I turned it on here at work on our 3D TV in the Game Cap lab, and it's this gorgeous 3D. It's concave. It's not convex, so it's not coming out of the
Actually,
screen.
is there
It's
any convex
deep.
3D anymore? Like in a post-Avatar world, how much stuff is popping off the screen?
It's
Very
well,
little.
when we were playing the MLB The Show, that's 3D. That's the coming out kind.
Oh, okay.
But
See, if Homefront
it looks like
had
an
3D,
extended
it would
window,
popped right
it was
out
cool.
at you.
All that wonderful writing, just been like, yeah. I was like,
Bring it on.
I'm immersed in the world.
You'd have been like, you've been like,
all
there's the
those
Hooters.
all those
I love
3D
it.
Hooters, yeah, exactly. But it's worth checking out if you get the PS3 version. Not everybody has a 3D TV. We're not
I know.
all
The
we're
majority
not
of
all
people don't.
Rockefellers, yeah. But it's cool. It looks like you've pushed in and you're looking through this window into this world. It's
Because
good.
you are inside the suit. It really does seem
Right.
to play. I saw it at E3. Like it's playing on the idea that you're inside of this thing with screens
Yeah.
on your
Like you
face.
said, when you
This might
armor
be a
up, the
little
rippling, you
conceptual.
can see it on the periphery of your vision. It's
But
cool.
do you guys find that in 3D, especially with like that internal 3D, that it actually kind of creates a plane that wouldn't be there if it wasn't
Yes.
3D, like an internal plane, and it makes it look kind of less like immersive than
I would have
I
to
don't know.
agree with you, Stephen. I haven't seen enough of the Crysis to think if that's happening there, but some demos I've seen. In fact, even the Uncharted 3 demo that we saw at GDC, especially because it was a third-person character, I found because of those planes that the character no longer seemed organically integrated into the background, and it almost kind of stood out in almost like a stop-motion Ray Harryhausen kind of way.
which is cool, like a cool effect if you were trying for
If
that
you're
kind
watching
of
The
thing.
Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Exactly.
There's a game idea.
I mean, yeah, we gave Crysis 2 a 4 out of 5. What did Homefront get?
3.
3 out of
3
5.
out of 5. I gotta say, Crysis is definitely in the discussion of Homefront and all that stuff. There seems to be a certain type of shooter that we're seeing all too much of. Crysis really does feel like an antidote for how a lot of shooters are being approached. My only thing is that I can go about 2.5 hours, and I'm a little like, blah. It does not. It's a well-paced game in terms of gameplay moments. It is not well-paced in terms of giving me a moment to let my eyes rest and my ears rest, my brain to rest. But, all you got to do is hit pause, and that's how you solve that problem. Nanosuit. Why is it called a nanosuit?
Nanotechnology.
Okay, because like nanosuit to me makes it sound like it's a really small
Like
suit.
a tiny
Here you go.
Right. I am
Well,
wearing
it's
the
tight.
smallest suit ever, and that's why I look naked. Are there other suits that you guys like, Nicole? I mean, have you ever thought like, God, I wish I could have that suit?
Best suit, Gordon Freeman. A, fits him like a glove.
It does. Do you
B.
ever see the suit though?
Yeah, well, I mean, in artwork. There's a,
Yeah, because you never see
walk
Gordon.
up to it. You don't see him in the suit unless like this is a mirror. I don't think there is.
Because
but you
Half-Life is
see
a
it.
world without mirrors.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
it's tragic. But it also has built-in flashlight and built-in morphine.
Nice.
Yeah, but the
And,
crappiest battery outside of Doom 3.
Times are tough, but and your suit talks to you like the
kinetic
nano
batteries
suit.
are better.
Steven?
My favorite suit is the Big Daddy suit
I completely see that.
from BioShock.
Yeah.
You
Do
can
you
see-
have one?
I have one at home, yeah. That diving bell that I've created
Really?
myself. No, I don't.
You don't
really,
look like Monster Robot, that wonderful movie from the 50s?
What I love about
Giant
it is
drill.
that you spend that entire level in BioShock, like building it, like getting all the parts, and then when you finally get it, you get to use that drill they've been using on you for 8 levels. It's fabulous.
rewarding. I'll admit
I
that.
think that's a very important piece of gameplay design. That somehow, that sense at the end, everyone always says, like, oh, the game needs to get harder and harder and harder. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think there's a point where, like, you need to take vengeance, and finally,
Yes.
full well you have the upper hand, and it's payback.
Who's the big daddy now?
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. To my TV,
Okay,
by my side.
say the Hooters
Wow.
song one more time.
Enemies in the Hooters.
I just see all these guys wearing khaki shorts and tucked in polos,
Hanging out in the Hooters.
with like evil eyebrow scowls. It's just like, nah.
And plates of hot wings.
You go from the White Castle to the Hooters, where there are enemies. It's terrific.
And then
I
you
mean,
hide
it's
behind
terrific.
a Nas.
Energy drink
Really?
sign. Yes, it's true.
It's-
It's
Wait,
pretty
Is
blatant.
that
Pretty
crap really
genius.
popular? I mean, when Fast and the Furious came out, I'm like, when did this happen? And like every so often, I see this Honda where I'm like, who would do that to a Honda? You could buy a Beamer, but it's like, hey, it's someone's own
Each their
choice.
own.
It's gross.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin, what's your favorite suit?
Mario's Tanuki suit.
Oh,
It is cute.
That
It's
is
a cute
the
one.
most awesome suit ever. You always wanted to find that thing, and when you got in it and you're flying around, everything was right with the world. I miss it.
You hit a
We
cool
think it's
button,
coming back with
gone.
3DS, Mario 3DS. They showed at the
artwork.
at GDC. The artwork has a little Tanuki tail.
Oh,
coming
good.
up.
I want all that depth with those big
Yes, you
testicles
do.
on the Tanuki.
You don't
Okay.
know it, but you do.
So I've been thinking about this. I'm trying to think of a suit that I like. And when I think of suit, I think of like the horrible outfits I had in GTA Vice City.
Oh wow, I forgot about that.
I just loved like, ooh, how bad can I look? I can look really bad. in this
John
game.
Marston had a lot of crazy suits.
He had great suits.
yeah.
The Jester, I love
The
that.
Dead Rising 2, you can put on tons of
See,
the hat with the elk.
Outside of
antlers
power
on.
suits, I'm just glad that we're seeing a return of suits to games.
Yeah.
You know,
I think games need to be better dressed, a little more formal.
Look,
Fashion
we all
forward.
kind of work in the world of video games and cable television, which is just kind of like
T-shirts and denim
down
shorts.
dressing mixed with down dressing.
I dress
And,
nice.
I mean, you do, which
dresses
is very, and I compliment you for it. Me, it's like, look, I'm just proud when I get my pants on correctly the first time, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna rethink this now. Guys, if I could just tell myself, shoes after. It would just
One
be-
day.
I stole my clothes from hobos.
And what did
He
what did
does
the how many naked hobos are running around town?
Dead naked hobos.
I'm telling you, they get drunk and you can just undress them.
My God, Los Angeles
Wow.
Boulevards turn into something.
So I thought
out
it
of-
couldn't get creepier. The image of Steve undressing hobos and looking for the next Hooters restaurant.
Yeah.
You're the danger of the Hooters, my
I'm
man.
the big daddy now.
Oh boy.
That's enough. No more
All
sound
right.
bites.
Let's go to our
Frightening.
question of the week, which I'll acknowledge it now. I think it's predicated on something of a misassumption, and a misassumption that many of our people who write in seem to have. But it does tie into some of the stuff we've been discussing today. It's from Electro Geek, not Electro. Electro. It is evident that campaign has taken a backseat to multiplayer in an FPS. That's what I don't agree with. However, no game has truly been able to take down the Goliath that is COD. Do you think it would be smarter for an FPS to strive for a gripping story or to capitalize on the collapse of Infinity Ward? Also, what are some games do you feel have exceptional story? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but outside of the military shooter, which, sort of Call of Duty and its derivations, most other FPSs seem to not necessarily just kind of eschew any kind of strong single-player campaign in favor of robust multiplayer.
Half-Life, I mean, that series is first person.
BioShock,
Yeah.
Half-Life.
That's true.
I mean, we are not. This is not an era with tons of shooters, but we do have Rage coming out, which looks very, very heavy on the single player. I think that people are looking at that because Call of Duty is always in the news. But I mean, Steven?
I think that maybe military games don't lend themselves as well to stories as other kinds of games. I mean,
it's not like they make
It's
for
war.
good movies or books.
yeah, no, exactly.
television shows.
Let's face it.
Panda Brothers. Oh God, I could have
boring.
I could have written that on a Dixie cup.
But as far as
Who's Tom Clancy? Who's this Tom Clancy guy?
As far as the
Never heard of
game
him.
that I think has the most exceptional story, Portal 2, or not Portal 2, but Portal, best story in a video game because you could not tell it in any other medium.
Nope,
You
nope,
couldn't.
you're absolutely right.
There's no other way you could tell that story except video games. I love the story in that game.
Well, I think what's happening is we're seeing multiplayer just becoming so popular, and it's a way to continue a story or continue a franchise.
Yeah.
Remember how BioShock had...
And it prevents resale. I mean, that's
Right.
really what the key
Yeah.
of multiplayer
And now
is.
with the selling of the codes, and THQ is on that board with that, EA, their online code. But BioShock had no multiplayer. BioShock 2, which I'd like to stress Ken Levine was not involved with,
Yeah.
they did put multiplayer in that. And so I think one of our other commenters was talking about, it seems like the first game now in a new series or new IP is to establish that game. Second game, they come in and add, okay, let's put we got to figure out how to put multiplayer.
Well, I think also, and I'm speculating here, but in the case of BioShock, I mean, Irrational Games, Ken Levine, I mean, he doesn't get to be as pushed around, I imagine, by a publisher
Yeah.
as, a younger, unknown team. And I think he says, I want to do a single-player game. That's fine. A second team did do BioShock 2. And, I assume every executive, just like everyone wants 3D in their movies at their studios, they're like, well, we got to get that multiplayer because that's what the kids want. I would like to know if the kids actually want multiplayer.
Well, I mean, they're playing.
By our readers and what they're sending in, I'm not convinced on that. I think the group that really wants multiplayer is small but very loud. It's like Metal Gear Solid fans.
I thought Bulletstorm was a good example. Great, fun, playable game. The multiplayer is terrible. It's not fun. It's frustrating. That definitely has that tacked on feeling. And we've seen that so many times with games. It's like, oh, this feels like an afterthought.
Now, the second part of Electro Geek's question is the part that I think is interesting. And I think it's come up for discussion before. Do you think we'd be smarter for an FPS to strive for a gripping story or to capitalize on the collapse of Infinity Ward?
There hasn't been. I mean, we don't know.
We don't know if Infinity Ward has collapsed.
Yeah,
but we do know
that's
that
an
some of the
assumption.
larger people have
But
moved
Battlefield
on.
definitely.
Collapse is the wrong word.
But Battlefield definitely put that single player demo forward, and they have put out I think part 1 and 2 so far.
But one of the things I hear a lot is I don't want to play the news anymore, which I think Battlefield 3 is a very impressive looking game. But I'm wondering, do we have a fatigue? I mean, I never thought that Call of Duty, for what it is, could last forever. And I wonder if there really is a hunger out there for something different. I mean, I wonder for all the numbers that COD sells, how many of that 19 million or whatever would call themselves hardcore gamers, which really are the ones who are keeping the industry afloat outside of that one franchise.
Well, because you gotta wonder how many people pick it up just because they recognize the name.
I did.
You know what I mean?
I knew that Call of Duty came out, so I had to go buy it.
To me, it's like Call of Duty, despite the fact that, look, there have been some excellent Call of Duties, but it's kind of like a Roland Emmerich movie. When they market it, I remember that Godzilla movie where from 10 miles away, you knew that was a stinking green pile of crap. But they marketed it so heavily with this kind of implicit blackmail, like, do you want to lose out on an important cultural event?
No.
Do you want to be the guy that can't join the conversation?
I don't want to be that guy.
Exactly. And that's what I think happens with Call of Duty.
Duty.
People get Call of Duty, and it's selling like crazy. Shouldn't we be getting a lot more emails of people asking us to talk about it more, asking us to, attacking our opinions on it and some of the statements we say? I mean, it sells well, but in terms of like a large swath of the internet, I should be running into Call of Duty insanity everywhere I go.
I almost feel it's a little akin to Madden. It comes out, you expect it to be good, you expect it to be tight, you expect it to be a certain game, you play it about a week and a half, it's done. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
you wait
Madden,
for the next one.
Madden, you play against your friends all year.
I don't play Madden.
But what I'm saying, me?
Are they
No.
the
I meant one would play against.
Do they wear a Big
one's
Daddy suit
friend.
too? How would you
I
think
think
that's
they
the
have
step there,
friends.
Steven?
I'm the Big Daddy now.
No.
Oh my God.
That's what I say to my friends.
Oh, those
I
poor
think-
Again, if you
hobos.
had
Multiplayer is a drug for publishers. They want to get you hooked. They want to get you coming back. Oh God, there's new DLC. We got to buy it. You've seen
new
the
maps.
Activision model. Yeah, new maps, new
Now,
features, etc.
I still think essential DLC is on a strong single player game. I mean, as bad as some of that Mass Effect 2 DLC is,
Whoa.
I'm like, well, I gotta get it. A, I can improve my character. B, I put so much time into this damn game. I need a little bit more.
Isn't it weird? Like it's like you gamble with those, and then something like Lair of the Shadow Broker comes out, and everyone loves it.
It was great.
Or with Borderlands, it was Secret Army of General
Here's
Knight.
Mass Effect 2. Thank God there's no Mako truck. It's like, ooh, DLC's coming. What
I would
the
buy that.
And that's coming out. That'll be
April-
out as of
March
the.
29th.
I know.
Oh, jeez, it's
Tuesday. I will
really?
be there. Yeah.
so weird that's coming, but I guess good.
No, yeah. I mean,
know
it just
good.
means that there's nothing until Mass Effect 3 at the end of the year. And
Which doesn't have a date yet.
it's got a date.
so
It's got a date with me
Bing.
and him at the Hooters. He's wearing his Big Daddy suit.
Hot.
This
I got
is
the
gonna be
Big Daddy
really
suit and
messy
some
looking
stolen
affair.
hobo clothes, and we're ready. Let's go.
I'm afraid. I'm really afraid.
Are there? I think we can all think of first-person shooters with an incredible story. I think the one that really kind of transcended that was the original Half-Life. It was just sort of a storytelling technique that really was like just emergent. No one had done that before. Where it didn't stop now and say like, here, we're going to hold your hand and explain to you everything that happened, even though you should have noticed it while you were playing it. It happened when you were playing it, and that's. I mean, do you guys think that's still the gold standard in terms of story structure? Or
Half-Life?
storytelling in a first-person shooter, not the best story
Yes.
ever. Well, thank you, Steve.
In short, yes.
Cutscenes.
It was definitely more human than like Halo. You have this faceless. There's a great story, but you're this faceless guy. You don't know much about him. With
Like-
Half-Life, it was much more human.
Yeah, because what nerd can't relate to Gordon Freeman?
He's the
Yeah,
nerd you want to be.
I can't
Yeah.
because he's a scientist, which means he's smarter than me. And so
But
I'm
you can-
already
you can pick up a
alienated right
crowbar
there.
easily.
Well, the memory I have, and it was probably that one of those aha moments, was you play that game and all you care about in the first half is getting to the surface. And it really is just like, I understood that feeling. I want to get out of this horrible, horrible situation. You get to the surface expecting rescue, and those very people you think are supposed to rescue you are now also your enemies. And it was just that kind of, oh, God. And it was all done without any cutscene. It's just a little bit of audio,
There's
and
real
you see them
emotion
coming
there,
down.
and-
Yeah, it was like, yes, that's what I wanted, have captured in the experience of playing a video game. I think BioShock BioShock got really like hit that nail on the head.
And
Well,
those games don't even have multiplayer. They don't even offer
That's
it.
true.
Yeah.
What's weird because Homefront, the story is so weak, the single player story, but it definitely feels like they spent more time working on that multiplayer.
Yeah. Now, but of course, in the case of Crysis, we didn't talk too much about the multiplayer because we haven't played it.
Yeah, we got to jump in there.
There's no question in my mind. Somebody spent a lot of time on the single player.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing nice things about the multiplayer, and I mean, there you have a strong balance. I just don't think that it's. I think some games survive perfectly with multiplayer, but I think a lot of it comes down to the marketing. Homefront was marketed as a single-player game, as far as I'm concerned.
Is there any game you can think of that would have suffered if it didn't have multiplayer?
If it didn't,
Red Dead Redemption, although the multiplayer was not ever the focus of that game, like I thought
It was a lot
that
of
was a
fun.
good way of using add-on multiplayer in a way that makes sense.
and you know what? It offered a fantasy. Who
Yep.
doesn't want to ride in a posse
With
with
their
your
buddies,
buddies?
yeah.
Exactly.
Except someone who
Shooting
doesn't
each
like
other's
horses.
We all got together and played.
Yeah, we did. That was
I was
so
I was
rad.
guilty
That
of
was so
shooting.
fun.
Everyone was piling into a stagecoach, and I just quietly went to the front and shot all horses.
I mean,
and they're like,
really,
"What's happening? We're
if
not moving."
possible, I wish there was a multiplayer in LA
couldn't help
Noir where I could hang out with a buddy wearing a suit, and we could go to a bar, smoke cigarettes, and try to pick up on women using slang that has no place in today's society.
Not to be a jerk, but you and I could actually do that.
We probably could, and get thrown out on our
There's a
ass
Hooters
in
in Burbank,
seconds.
guys.
We can go to the Hooters in Burbank.
I want to see. I want to see that. I want to see that happen. Let's make it happen.
I mean, I think that's the thing is that competitive multiplayer. There's only so many ways you can really slice it for a certain. For the Abby Happies of the world, who can see a level of nuance that is absolutely remarkable. That's one thing, but I like it when the multiplayer, cooperative or otherwise, offers this kind of fantasy. And when you're young, you think about would it be cool if me and my friends we saved the world together. And I think that same instinct kind of lingers on, especially as you get older and you work in corporate environments. Yeah.
And there is something there's something a little off-putting about the fact that competitive multiplayer requires so many hours of practice to be competent at that if you don't have those hours, you just no fun to play.
And practice doesn't always make perfect.
Yeah.
Practice just eats up time.
StarCraft is a really good. StarCraft 2 is a really good example. of
You play StarCraft against somebody who plays StarCraft for 5 hours a day, and
It's
you have a
not
couple
fun.
hours a week.
Yeah.
You're not going to have fun.
Yeah,
It's not going to be good for you.
I think the final lesson we can take from this is winners talk. And I think that's allowed for the perpetual sense that somehow multiplayer is the most important aspect of a game. With that, we must be winners because we've talked for the entire duration of this feedback episode, huh?
Surprise.
How's that segue, kids?
Yeah,
Huh?
Wow,
Yeah,
amazing.
I think that's like my best in the
Award
past
of the
2
week.
months. Probably it's, I don't know. I had an extra synapse this morning. Just burned it out.
Check the site. Watch
Yes.
Ken Levine PAX feedback. Check all of our PAX coverage.
And obviously keep us
3DS
covered
coverage.
through the 3DS. Things are happening. There's good things, and we'll talk about them next week on
Yay.
feedback.
Play Homefront.
In the Hooters.
Enemies in the Hooters.
Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of XPlay, editor-in-chief at G4TV.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on G4TV.com.